Hello, and welcome. Zeteo here. Welcome to another Beyond All Reason replay analysis. In the last couple of videos, we covered Frog and Masoki as they played a 2v2 on Tangerine. I broke down some really good fundamental stuff, so I'd suggest checking those out if you feel like any of you need some guidance with that, especially if you struggle with understanding how to play on different maps. Anywho, in this video, we'll be checking out Pro Razor as they play a very quick 1v1 on red comets. And specifically, I'll answer some questions that they had concerning like bots and vehicles, specifically in a 1v1 kind of situation. And, just moving your commander forward versus using your commander's build power back at base. I'll also be covering some early game economy and expansion type stuff, but that's going to be a little bit more on the back burner, a little bit more like nitpicky kind of stuff, if you will. But yeah, firstly, before we even get started with this match, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between going bots and vehicles. So bots are cheaper on metal and they're faster to produce, so you can get more on the field a lot quicker. But they are a little bit weaker against turrets and static defenses. Vehicles are a little bit more metal expensive. They produce slower, but they pack a heavier punch. So getting them out early oftentimes means like using a lot of your metal bank. And if you don't have that bank, you need to go get nodes quickly to replenish your metal so that you have stuff to build with, right? Since vehicles are more metal expensive, grabbing those nodes is like super important. Defending against a bot player that's really aggressive can be very tricky because bots are very agile. They can, run circles around the vehicle and around like an expanding constructor, and vehicles will have a harder time catching up to it or maneuvering properly to hit it. Yeah, because bot openers take less metal. You can crank out a lot more units, and so it makes a lot more sense for your commander to stay put and crank out those early units if you want to be aggressive. And then as a vehicle player, using up all that metal means having your commander boosting your lab doesn't really do anything because you don't have the metal to work with, right? So, sending them out earlier is important. Specifically talking about the map, we're looking at Red Comet here. It looks like it was set to dual preset. I might be wrong on that. Actually, I'm probably wrong on that, but either way, you're starting mexes. If you start in this position on these 3 mexes, that's a good position to start with. Don't get me wrong. But your next node is all the way over here or down here. And so it's kind of far away, and it's, having a turret at your base is not going to defend the nodes down here, right? So you kind of have to like plan how is your defense going to go. Are you going to use units? Are you going to use turrets? Are you going to do a mixture? And if the bot player is very aggressive, what do you do about it? Those are, that's a tricky thing to do. So we'll see exactly how you do it. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, so let's take a look at your opener because that can be very important. If you're dealing with early bots aggression, having a nice clean opener is kind of important. All right, so 2 mechs solar, looks like 2 solar then lab. Okay, so it looks like you're building your lab off of 2 mexes, and that's not usually recommended for vehicles because vehicles are so metal heavy that you kind of want to have that 3rd mex. And that's kind of tricky on this map, right? Because it's so far away. It's like you got to walk quite a distance to get that. And so it's like, if a scout or something comes into your base, it can easily harass these 2 mexes then. So how do you defend that? A lot of players will end up doing things like grabbing 2 mexes, building 1 solar, building a turret, walking over here, grabbing this mex, building on your 2nd solar up here, and then building the lab. And that just, that allows you to get those 3 nodes right away. And it also leaves a turret back here to defend against scouts. Now, if you really think about it, with the distance to your opponent, it's not terribly long, but it's not that short either. It takes time for for an enemy scout to get up here, especially if, they're not going to just open one lab off known nodes, right? Or maybe they do, and that's, maybe that's what you're dealing with. But most of the time, people will grab their two metals and solar and in the lab, right? And so it takes time for them to build, those early units to come up here and harass. So you actually have time to grab these two nodes, walk over here, grab the third, build your two solar, build your lab, and then, you can put like a turret, you can put a turret here at, after all that, or you can put a turret here after all that. And that just kind of allows you to, I mean, it depends on what you want to do, right? Like if you, right after the lab, maybe you boost it for a little bit, maybe you're able to, um, but the idea, of course, is to get a turret or something over here in order to defend this area. So either, you know, cranking out some early scouts to deal with any, potential ticks or something like that, can be really useful. If you're going to try to just defend with units, if you're going to do that, try to get a very, very early radar to, see them coming and respond to where they're going. But yeah, you actually do have time to just like build the stuff here, walk over here, build the turret, and then walk back. I don't usually recommend that route just because it's a lot of walking time that you're kind of wasting in that, to do that. So I do like the turret thing personally. But yeah, just to mention that as a like secondary option. But yeah, especially if they're core bots, like a grunt's gonna take even longer to get there, so you got time. All right, so you're producing some scouts early. That's good. You grab this third mech, so that's that's very important. You're already sort of low on metal. You just, I guess, just to point out, like if you did grab this node first before that stuff, like I was talking about, your metal would probably be up here around now. It's like it's like that drastic of a difference of just like having that much more, and that means being able to crank out your constructor a lot more easily, building another, building a third solar collector, so you don't stall, and things like that. Here you are stalling on energy a bit, and so what you want to do, and you basically, like early game, you want to watch your resources like a hawk. You want to know as soon as you run out of energy, you want to start building on some more energy, and that'll just allow you to properly use your metal. So it looks like you are doing that. It's just it's a little bit late, and that little bit late can be a big deal, because now that means your entire production line is a little bit behind because of that, and that just means their units can be closer to your base, and you'll have less units. You have a scout over here. That's nice. You actually have like some harass potential here too, by the way. If you can muster up some more APM, you probably already know this, but yeah, going in here, doing some, I mean, scouts actually have some, a lot of line of sight. So you can actually like come up here, see if there's an LLT, and then just avoid the red ring that you see, if there is. There's some special micro that you can do to still maybe harass this extractor, like coming in at specific angles. Like the turret of, or the turret of the turret has, it turns at a certain speed, and so if it's looking away from the angle that the scout's coming in, like you can actually, like let's say there's a turret here and it's facing this way, then your scout can actually come like right here, kind of hide behind the solar and the mechs, and shoot down both. And the turret won't be able to fire on it, because to fire on it would mean the projectile goes through the mechs or through the solar collector, and it's not going to shoot a friendly, so it just won't attack. But yeah, that's some next level kind of micro type stuff. But I guess just to throw that out there. At this time, you should absolutely have a radar. Now radar, they build very quickly. And so they'll actually drain quite a bit of your energy if you have any. So you do want to get your energy up before you get a radar. But yeah, having a fourth, actually even at this point, maybe even a fifth solar collector would be helpful. Okay, so here's that first grunt. It's harassing your constructor. So at this point, this is like absolutely as a bot player, this is what you want to be doing. Like find that constructor, harass the shit out of it. And you know, anytime that they try to move their incisor into play, you just run around. It's like say the incisor is running this way, you just run around this way. Use the you know, the vehicle constructor as a shield. You want it between the incisor and the grunts, and the grunt can just keep firing on this constructor until it's dead. That is a huge pick off if you can get it. Now, as a vehicle player defending, this is very rough. This is very hard. You know, and in fact, what I would recommend, I mean, firstly, it's very important to like properly chase it down. And there's like a whole bit of micro that happens like at that moment. You know, basically just trying to catch / chase down the grunts. But yeah, this is kind of a bigger issue here because you have a constructor out here and it's the only guy grabbing metal nodes. And that's, you know, as a vehicle player, it's very important to have those metal nodes. And your incisor is all the way back here, just chilling. And so this constructor is taking a lot of damage. Okay, the incisor's moving up, so maybe you can pick it off in time. Okay, so you do get it in time. But this leaves the whole question of like, what about the next grunt? You know, like where's that next grunt at? And so it can become very, very tricky. Now, luckily you do have a scout here for some extra sight range, but there's no radar. And so if there is a second grunt, we have no idea. We don't know if there is one. We don't know which direction it's coming from. And because of that, we have no idea where to position our incisor. So absolutely get a radar. I usually do it with the commander. You know, I'll have, you know, like 4 solar built up at this point. I'll crank out 2 constructors with him, and then I'll move him out. That first constructor going out to grab nodes like this guy is. Second constructor assists the factory. That way you have some extra build power on it to crank units out with. And then as the commander moves out, or maybe even before he moves out, to put down a radar somewhere nearby to just see out that way. So if we put one in base, you know, say like we put one right here, you know, obviously there's some rocks in the way that, you know, our vision's not going to be perfect, but we'd be able to see that grunt coming a little bit ahead of time, hopefully, if you're paying a lot of attention. And this is part of what makes 1v1s very, very difficult, is just having to manage all that. You have to manage, you know, it's just like a lot more space. Like not only are you macroing at your base, you know, moving your commander around, you know, setting your construction queues, adding on energy, you know, and then you got your constructors going out, grabbing more metal nodes, and maybe even more than one constructor, right? Like you have one right now, but you know, eventually you could have a second one coming down this way, and then your commander's moving out this way. You know, so you got like 3 separate areas to like even think about. Actually 4 if you can include the base. So it's just like a lot to manage, right? So it's not easy. You know, 1v1s are not easy. Okay, so now there's 2 grunts here. I'm not sure if you've like actually noticed them or not yet. In fact, so let's put down that, show that radar range again. Okay, so they would be kind of blocked here if it was there. You know, realistically, or I should say, ideally, you want your radar on like a high ground like this. But that means, you know, getting it later and just kind of being in the dark until you have that finished. And that's kind of, you know, can be kind of rough, especially against a very aggressive player. So yeah, unfortunately, the constructor goes down. You lose the mechs, and you lose the metal that went into, you know, that partly built mechs. And now the grunts are just walking away. Walking away like chads. So now you have your next constructor coming out to replace him. And this is very important. Like, it's actually more important to do this than to like crank stuff out at your base, because you need the metal to do so, right? But the same thing here is your energy is still low, and you actually cannot, like, you're assisting with your commander, but you're not actually benefiting from it because you don't have the resources to use on that lab. So just notes that usually with the 3 starting mexes you want 4 solar. Yeah, and that that just comes down to being Red Comet or if it's CCR, same type of thing. But like yeah, just having it not be a wins map. But yeah, it kind of sucks because at this point, this is your 3rd constructor being built, and they're not free. They're 145 metal. So I mean that and the build time. So that means you have less units on the field, and that's less units to defend with. And that's why this first constructor being picked off is a big deal, because now you're spending all this time rebuilding your constructors instead of building things to defend the constructors. So this guy, I don't know if this guy's going to die as well, but just a thing that could happen. All right, you choose to reclaim first. I would actually say grab the mexes first, unless you need the metal like immediately, because those mexes, they give you the metal over time, and so the sooner you build it, the more metal overall you will have. And these reclaim fields are, they're going to be there. It's on your side of the map, so I mean, it's basically going to be yours. But yeah, going back to the whole radar thing. So as you build radar, or I should say, as you go out and grab these metal nodes, you also want to build a radar when you can. I usually, personally, I build the 2 nodes first, then a radar, and then a laser. And I'll have units stationed like you do to help defend until that point in time. And then yeah, just having that starting radar helps a lot too. So like, you have your starting radar here, the line ends like around here, right, for the radar. So I can see a little bit beyond where I'm expanding to, but then I also built another radar here to extend that range. And that makes these other expansions a little bit safer because then you can see what's coming. To answer your question about the commander a little bit better, because I don't feel like I explained it all that well prior. Basically, if you open bots, your basically the lab itself is cheaper, and the units coming out of it are cheaper on metal as well. So that means your commander can stay there and boost the lab to get more units out. Whereas for a vehicle player, since stuff does cost more metal, you want to stay put, or I'm sorry, you want to not stay put and go out and grab metal nodes because you're going to need that metal. In your particular case, you aren't quite using all your metal, and you actually still need energy. So actually, you might even need a 5th solar collector. But your commander's trying to boost the lab, and so that's where a lot of the energy is going. And if the commander moves out, now you don't have that 300 build power draining a lot of your energy. So I think 4 should be enough, but yeah, you might need a 5th kind of thing. All right, so now he's running around even more bots down here. I'm really curious to know how your opponent has expanded. Okay, so your opponent basically just has the starter stuff, and then very, very aggressively moved his commander all the way up here, skipping all these nodes up here, or on the way. He didn't move towards any nodes, and he's just cranking out grunts. And grunts are really cheap. They're kind of like, they're like significantly cheaper than a pawn. And part of the reason for that is because they don't have a tick, they don't have a scout. So ticks do kind of well against core like very, very early, but then the grunts come out and the grunts are a little bit better, type of thing. And then I don't know, there's a whole thing with that. I'm trying not to get too in depth with all the things, but because that doesn't really have to do with this particular game. But yeah, just to take a look at what they're doing, the aggressive play is very aggressive. And so for you on your side with your limited vision, it's going to feel like they just are everywhere. And it's kind of true, they are everywhere, but he kind of sacrificed a lot to do that. Um, whereas I guess, you know, I guess to uh, say like that, if they were doing a more economic play and opened with a bunch of constructors, well, they could have already had these two nodes. They could have already had these two nodes, already had some extra solars back here, and had their commander like up here. You know, so they're sacrificing all that to have all these units out instead. But that would be like a pure economic opener instead. Yeah, energy's still an issue. And in fact, that's probably the main issue you're having is you're just a little shorts on energy. And didn't move your commander out. Let's grab the metal nodes. Because usually you should be out of metal at this point, and you kind of are. But yeah, you're just a little bit low on energy. This, you typically don't want to do. You don't want to just queue up a whole bunch of solar collectors early on, because it's very easy to overbuild energy that way. And you really just want just enough to keep your bar full. And so you want to kind of look at these two numbers here and make sure that they're pretty similar. Alright, so yeah, you see right now that your commander's not assisting. Well, now your energy's going up. So you don't actually need these until you have more metal. And don't get me wrong, you just grab these two nodes, so now you do have a little bit more metal. So a fifth makes sense here. But just having all that extra, maybe not as much. Just to talk about commander movements a little bit, since we are talking about moving the commander out a little bit. Generally, you want your commander more centered. And you want your units a little bit, you know, you want your units kind of centered as well. And then you have radar that can see on the edges. And that way, if there's something that, you know, if there's a raid that comes, or yeah, if there's a raid that comes in this way, you see it on radar, your unit stationed in the middle, you can like peel some off of your main group and go respond. You know, same thing over here, you can go respond. That's the whole idea with that. Moving your commander towards the bottom here, you know, basically means there's a bit of a weakness in the center, and the top isn't as strong either. But granted, these are closer. There's two of them, so you can more easily get those two mexes by doing it this way. Just know that there's, you know, there's a sizable trade-off by not having your strength being in the middle of the map. Yeah. I feel like I'm explaining things kind of strangely today. It's kind of weird. Alright, so now your energy is going to be too much. Since all these solar collectors cost a bunch of metal, you know, you're using up a lot of your metal where you could actually be stockpiling right now with the build power that you have on your lab. Okay. Ooh, okay, so your radar finally got up. And you see all these dots, you know, these are probably mostly grunts. You see a commander that's already up here. And this, you know, from your angle, this looks hyper aggressive, hyper strong. Because you can only imagine, like, oh, they have these expansions, and like, oh, they already have their commander all the way the heck up here. And it just feels awful. But again, you know, they gave up a lot for that, so don't worry about it too much. It just, you know, it's just something to think about, like, okay, there's commander moving in. You know, do I need to set up extra defenses in this region? And it looks like they're being even more aggressive by moving their commander up, and this is a risky play. But you do only have one LLT here right now, so it's kind of fine that they're doing that. Looks like they're actually out of energy, so they can't really degun, right? So I'm curious to know how this goes down. Yeah, in terms of micro, it seems like you know what you're doing. You're pulling back so that not all the grunts can fire on your one incisor. Well, this is kind of really good for you. They just like saved up for that D-gun, which means all their production stopped for a moment because they were out of energy. Just to kill that LLT, and the LLT got a lot of shots off on this commander. So this commander is actually very low. And I'm gonna cheat for you to show you how low it actually is. That's how low this commander is after just one LLT firing on it for a little bit. You know, so he can't really do that again, at least not for a while. Not until he's like healed up a bit. Yeah, that totally sucks for you, considering now these are the only two extra mexes that you have. I guess you're grabbing this one, but that's so close to his commander that it's hard. So the other thing about moving your commander more towards the center, more like this direction, if you spot his commander up here, you can now change course and go up here. Or maybe you spot his commander down here, and now you want to like maybe secure these mexes. Or something, you know, it just like gives you more freedom to like maneuver around. Whereas over here, you just feel like you're really far away from everything. You can't really use that awesome power the commander has. You know, being how much hit points and build power and, you know, the neat gun. There's a lot of benefits to having the commander in a important location early on, because not a lot can kill it quite yet. Alright, looking back, just lots of incisors, which is reasonable. Incisors are pretty much what you want. I mean, I say that, but at the same time, having the enemy commander here means maybe you can be, you know, a little bit more, like basically this player is going to need to have stuff here to defend the commander with. And so certain things like medium tanks might make sense, but you don't really have the metal to do that either. So incisor is totally fine here. It's basically what you want. I'm not sure if these brutes are queued up afterwards or kind of like in between. Probably afterwards, so I'm not going to worry about it. Let's see, you're maneuvering around this way. So this feels a little bit odd, because if your plan is to go around the commander, you know, to do like some harass and stuff, I mean, I guess, yeah, this is okay. I guess my only thought is like, why go up and around this way when you could just go this way? But I suppose in your minds it might be like, oh, there's a bunch of like turrets and stuff everywhere up here. There's probably less defenses up here. So it kind of makes intuitive sense. Yeah, this is a good call. You know, as soon as, you know, if you see an aggressive play like the commander's all the way up here, chances are this is not very built out. You know, chances are they probably were aggressive with their units early, and they don't have a ton of, you know, stuff, you know, economy going on, which means it's going to be harder for them to produce units now. And so having, you know, a group of 5 incisors, you know, can pretty easily take out an LLT. You know, so it's good to raid with them. This is kind of a lot of grunts, and he's responding very well, it looks like. So you might want to pull back, especially since your units are not together. It just means they have less firepower. I'm not sure if you've actually seen what's here, but I see the ring here personally. And that might have been just because I took it off your view. I mean, this is fine too. Actually, let me explain flanking damage a little bit in case you don't know. So in settings, I don't know if this is on by default or not. I don't know what they have set up nowadays. Let's see if I can find it. Flanking. All right, I can just type in flanking. You might need to be in advanced. Yeah, advanced options. Flanking direction. With that turned on, actually, let me change my camera. Control camera zoom limit. I put it really high so that I don't allow myself to zoom in super far when I play. Alright, so flanking damage is basically this red half circle here and this white half circle here. So when a unit gets hit, there's a, the white half circle points towards the direction of the enemy unit that hit it. And that's like the quote-unquote flanking like fronts of the damage, or of the unit. And damage coming in at this angle will deal 100% damage. Once that's once that's formed, once it's hit, if the unit is hit in the back where the red half circle is, that damage from the back will inflict 200% damage. So it's like extra damage that you can get from that. And then from the side, this would be like 150, 125, or whatever it is, depending on the angle. So what you actually want to do is flow around this turret, and you might be doing that. I just thought I'd point it out in case you didn't know that one, or for anybody watching in case they don't know. All right, so you take out the turret, you take out the 1 max, the solar. The solar's kind of a big deal because they are expensive. But it's not really worth the price of the units that you sent in there. I mean, I guess it was only 3 incisors, but it's still kind of like a heavy price considering you lost a bunch of stuff early. So what that basically means is you're naked now, because you just lost 3 incisors here. You have 2 more incisors that are doing some raiding in the back, and then you have 2 incisors out here to potentially do more raiding, or maybe maybe they're here defensively. I'm not sure. And by the way, if they are here defensively, they should maybe be back here, because you want to see the stuff on the radar and then send it to respond. If they're here and something comes up here, you can't really do much about it. Or if they come down here, you can't do much about it, because they're already past these units. But yeah, like this whole section is basically naked at this point, and that has to do with you losing these, not having the metal to really have a lot of units out, and that has very much to do with how much energy you had early on. I hope this all makes sense. If you have any questions or anything, definitely ask them either in the comments in YouTube, or you can in the thread that we made. Alright, so incisors coming in here. They're probably just going to get picked off here. Yeah. So I'm curious to know what their radar looks like. Okay, so they don't even have radar. Big blunder on their part. But they did see your units over here. So they knew something was probably up and put their grunts here in response. Okay, so I don't think they know about these. Where are they going? Okay, you decided to turn back with them to defend with, I suppose. I mean, if they're all the way over there, you might as well send them in. I'm not sure if this is because they're on like the same auto group or something. Because yeah, I mean, it's hard to know too, right? You don't know where vulnerabilities are until you like scout it. So it's kind of hard to know where you can actually deal damage. Yeah. I mean, it's fine that you pull them back. I just kind of feel like if they're going to be out there, possibly already detected, they might as well. Alright, so this is pretty good from your opponent, Baga. They have multiple control groups. Or what seems like multiple control groups, right? Which is, can be really strong. It's kind of seemed like you were able to do that too, so that's a very good skill to have. Okay, so Raiders coming down south. You respond to the north ones. Unfortunately, that means these guys are going to have free reign. Good micro. Yeah, so overall, I think you're doing just fine. It's just like little details, especially that early energy. It's kind of a big deal. Alright, so you got a pounder out. Okay, so now you know that they have a vehicle lab, and that vehicle lab's probably at the front here where the commander is. So that gets a little rough because the medium tanks can tank so many more hits. And your pounder's not going to really help. Okay, so you decide to resign there. I don't blame you for resigning at that point because, these guys were going to very easily be able to destroy this outpost here. Um, so I draw kind of not good. Make a circle, please. There we go. That's a circle. Um, but yeah, they could take this out pretty easily, and it's like, okay, what metal do you even have now? And that's kind of the power of moving your commander out. Um, so to touch base on some of that stuff again, um, like with bots, you know, they take less energy, or they take less metal to build the bots and the lab and stuff, and so you end up starting with like kind of more money to work with before having to move out, and so you can sit there with your commander and you know, boost the base, build some extra solar, you know, keep boosting the base, get out a whole bunch of grunts, and then just like move your commander forward. And you know, they moved out pretty early considering all that. Um, I mean, I should say they moved very aggressively considering all that, because if they had taken these metal nodes, they could have had probably more units out. But vehicles, by contrast, you know, they take a lot more metal, and so moving your commander out is more important to be able to grab those nodes. And yeah, just moving your commander out early, or moving them like pretty far out, is kind of risky, because well, I mean, to look at this game, like the enemy commander is here, right? Your units could swing in here, destroy all these defenses and stuff, you know, within this area, and now the commander's completely cut off. You know, so later on, it's like, okay, medium tanks are out, or um, you know, or you know, you get a whole bunch of incisors together and just like take out the commander pretty easily, because nothing can defend it as easily. Vehicles, by the way, not as great against commanders because of the D-gun and stuff, but you might already know that. Um, and then yeah, I mean, it's just hard getting these expansions. And that's it's something that takes a minute to learn for sure. But yeah, the main thing, the energy early, trying to boost the lab when you didn't really have the energy to do so with. If you had a little, like if you had one more solar and boosted the lab with that you know, after that solar, then your metal would be completely drained. And you know, and that just shows like your commander should be moving out, because him staying there boosting the lab doesn't actually help it, because there's nothing to boost it with. You need the resource to actually boost it with. So yeah, having your commander, I think is there a node over there? Yeah, there's a node right here, and there's a node right here. So in terms of actual pathing with your commander on this particular map, like I usually go like here, and then I don't know, I think I usually go this way, which is a kind of a weird path, but it's kind of like there's not that many nodes, you know, towards like the actual center here. And then I'll have a constructor going down here grabbing these, possibly moving on to these, but even more importantly, moving on towards the center, because just like the commander, you know, like, you know, for example, I guess using red as an example here, you know, aggressively move the commander up this way and took this very forward position from you. What was I just saying? Wow, it's like just gone. So yeah, they took that forward position, which, you know, it feels very, what am I even, I don't even remember what I'm saying. Oh no, I'm tired. I hope this helps you. If I think of it later, I'll let you know. But yeah, I hope that kind of gets after what you were going after. I hope you learned something from that. Yeah, I'm gonna sign off. See you later. GG.